I've actually heard that the Darien Gap is one of the most dangerous places on the planet.
It's dangerous if you're crossing. It's dangerous if people don't want you there. Those Indians can't. I mean, the Indians I'm out with all the time, they do a lot of the killing. When there's a lot of firefights out there. There's the Senate fronts out there, getting into contact all the time, but that's on the routes where they pay less money.
How are you received down there? What do you have a cover, or are you just?
Everybody knows who I am.
Everybody knows who
I am. I'm out with the Indians all the time. I'm out with Imbra Indians, Wunan Indians a little bit, and Kuna Indians. They all know me by. In fact, again this morning I got a message from while we were together. I got a message from one of the Imbra Indian mayor, Francisco Agapi. He's the mayor of 29 villages of Imbra, Wunan, and that what they call comarca, which is a reservation. So most of the villages that the aliens come through are his villages, right? So we've actually had him up in Washington. Todd Bensman had helped get him up there, and we had him talking with congressmen and whatnot, and so we've had him to the United. He speaks English fluently. He actually went to school in Oregon, in that crazy place. And then actually went back to Darien Gap where it was safe. You can't make up this stuff. Everybody's talking about how dangerous Darien is, but he would rather be back in Darien than actually in Oregon.
Interesting. I've actually heard that the Darien Gap is one of the most dangerous places on the planet.
It's dangerous if you're crossing. It's dangerous if people don't want you there. Those Indians can't. I mean, the Indians I'm out with all the time, they do a lot of and killing. When there's a lot of firefights out there. There's the Senate fronts out there, getting into contact all the time, but that's on the routes where they pay less money. Now, when there's so many people coming in, like 3,000 a day, the aliens coming in reach predator saturation, right? So there's more people coming in than the predators have a chance to do anything about it. So most of the people end up getting through without getting raped or robbed when you're coming through thousands at a time, because there's just not enough robbers and rapists, right?
This bridge that they're building, how big is this bridge? How many lanes?
I don't know yet.
How much construction is being built on it? I mean, is this like equivalent to the amount of infrastructure that China's putting into Africa, building 4 8-lane highways?
You'll be able to get tanks over it. I mean, because one thing that I was waiting for was for them to start putting the abutments in so I could photograph them and send them back to some engineers, which I've done.
Is China building the road?
Nobody says who's putting the money in it. So it indicates to me it's China, because China has a way of doing this, right? So when I keep asking government people, who's actually paying for this? Nobody seems to know.
Nobody knows who's paying for the bridge.
I'm sure somebody knows, but they're not coming off with it.
How active are they? How active is the construction?
Oh, very active. I mean, it's like everybody's. I mean, I literally was just down there and making video over the shoulder of the construction foreman, looking at the blueprints. They were literally they let us. It's Panama. They let you just look over their shoulder.
Does this look similar to here in the U.S. if somebody's building an overpass? Or
they work harder down in Panama.
You know what I'm saying, though? Is there excavators, concrete trucks, tons of construction workers?
They're actively building it. They're building at least 2 bridges, possibly 3.
So it's a major project.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't like some sticks.
No. The Sticks project.
It's not a river and stream crossing.
There are some of those, but let me tell you how those work. And when you come down, you're going to see it. Okay, this is one that you'll be able to drive tanks over. You'll see the abutments. I'll give you the photos and whatnot, or just bring it and show you. But this is one this is for very heavy stuff. But when we asked the people building the bridge, the foreman, he's like, "Oh, it's for yucca, the food." Yucca. It's like a T-72 yucca. I don't know. So I was like, I don't know, but whatever. It's clearly going to be big enough for tanks. I'm not saying that that's what they're going to use. I'm just saying it's going to be big enough to take those trees out of the jungle, because those trees in the Darien Gap are probably worth billions of dollars. So let's get to that. Now, the Chinese, every year, they rebuild a lot of these small, like sort of sticks bridges, because they're constantly cutting the trees down, even in rainy season. And then when the rainy season comes, it blows out all these little bridges, right? And so the Chinese come and they rebuild the bridges every year, and that's part of how they get the trees from the Indians, because the Indians want the bridges open, right? So and then the Indians sell the trees for $20 each, except for the coca-cola trees, which are like $2,000 per ton, right? But there's trees out there that are probably worth $1 million each, like the black ebony trees and whatnot. But keep in mind, trees are like drugs, right? And they are worth a lot more upstream, right? In other words, if you have a really high quality, some of these trees that they have out there, when you make chess pieces out of it and sell those things, this thing's worth a lot of money. It's like ivory, right? It's like drugs. Now, to the Indians, they're like, yeah, we got all these trees, millions and millions of trees, $20, or for the more expensive ones, the coca-cola, $2,000 per ton. But again, downrange, once you get these things out on the ships where they make stuff out of them, or back to China or to the Middle East where people can use these things for furniture, those trees are worth a lot of money. So keep that in mind as you're building this highway through the Darien Gap. You're also building access to more of the trees. I've got somebody going down there today, actually finding the head of one of the trails where they're doing more logging this year. The dry season is just
How long have you said you've been going down there?
I started immediately after Biden was installed.
About 3 years.
Yep, I was in Washington for the inauguration, and you saw how quickly they put up those trees, right? Not the trees. How quickly they put up those fences, right? Mm-hmm. So immediately, Chuck Holton and Masako Ganaha and I flew right to El Paso because we thought that they would start flooding over the border and from Mexico to El Paso, and they were. And the Border Patrol was like, wow, he's only been in office for 48 hours, and we're getting overwhelmed. And we were seeing it, right? And then we flew down to Colombia, and we went to the Darien Gap on the Colombian side. And then I started going to Panama constantly because I'm like, this is it. This is where they're going to run right up the middle. It's going to be, so I started spending a lot of time there developing networks and situational awareness, figuring this out. Where are they going to build? Are they going to build a bridge here? Yeah, I thought they would. That's why I'm constantly reconning for the bridge, and they just started the bridge now. And not just a bridge, but a pathway to Colombia, right?
So where I'm going with this is, how much have you seen the infrastructure develop down there, especially when it comes to the Chinese side?
Oh, it must.
In 3 years.
Okay. Now, for just the Darien Gap, it's got to be, based on what we saw in the last 2 weeks, I would say 5 times more.
What did you see when you first started going there?
When I first started going there, I went to a place called Bajo Chiquito, right? And keep in mind, it was not very open. I had to do the normal, make friends with the Indians and that sort of thing. I found the chief, Francisco, got to know him, and he's like, well, you should come to Bajo Chiquito. So it's just me. I'm out with the Indians all the time. So mostly for those about 6 months I've spent down there, it's been mostly me alone, basically setting conditions to bring people down. So you see all these journalists down there now like Ben Berkwam and Oscar Blue and Epoch Times and Brett Weinstein. It was me setting the runway to bring them all down. So So what did I see back then? I saw Bajo Chiquito, this village about 3 hours by dugout canoe up into the Darien Gap, was just like overrun. There's 403 people in that village at that time, according to their census of Embra Indians, and sometimes there would be, at least equal that number of aliens or double, right? Crap everywhere. Feces everywhere, like terrible. No water supplies. Literally at that point, I went out with Chuck Holton a couple of times when he would come down with me, and I said, what do you think the fatality rate is of people coming through on this route? And I didn't want to load the answer. And he said, no, maybe 10%. That's what I had written down. I said, I don't know, 7, 12, something. I was like, because that's based on talking with just so many people coming through, how many bodies they were seeing, how many rapes and murders they were seeing, how many people were falling off the mountain of death or drowning, washing down the river, wrapped up in their tents. And that, a lot of these people have never been by any rivers. They come from cities. They don't know what a flash flood is. That's a rainforest, right? And it's in the mountains. You cross the Continental Divide. When you come through the mountain of death, out in the Darien Gap is the Continental Divide, right? Okay. So you're crossing the Continental Divide, and they sleep. The easiest places to sleep are by the rivers. How this plays out. You're a Navy SEAL. It doesn't play out well in a rainforest, right? So you end up one group that was coming through, it was 40 people, and 20 died, 50%.
What does the infrastructure look like now? So
Now,
it sounds like
now it's like now, for instance, the Indians, they used to have 15 horsepower engines. Now most of them have 30. By the way, every boat that I've ever seen in the jungle is all piraguas, not a shred of fiberglass. A piragua is a dugout canoe. They literally chop down a sizable enough tree. It takes them, like a month, and they hollow that thing out. And then they literally make it usually right where it lands, the first part of it anyway, and then they put an engine on them. And if you look at the old, I found an old painting from about, 160, 70 years ago, and it's got a piragua out in the jungle in Panama. They look exactly the same, except now they have a motor, right? And so one of the ways that the infrastructure has increased is just going from 15 horsepower engines to 30, which is a big deal. Sometimes the people can do 2 trips a day with those instead of 1, right? So I mean, there's all these little things that are incremental. There's a lot more piraguas now than there were before. There's they have the NGOs have made water facilities there. Right now they're building 2 new camps out, or actually 3 in the jungle that we know of. One is at Bajo Chiquito Village. We were just at it like 10 days ago. There's another near Bajo Chiquito Village, which is going to, be big enough for maybe 15,000 people per day, right? It's quite large. And I'll give you that drone footage and footage from the ground. And then on a completely different river, that's called the Rio Turquesa. On a completely different river, the Rio Membrillo, that we call that the China route, they're building another new camp out there as well. I mean, you're going to be able to, I would say, at least increase by 5 times.
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.